Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning to all. I hope all are ready because we are about to begin. Mister, okay? Ready? I will now introduce our distinguished panelists, the Honorable Mr. Hashim bin Hussein, Headmaster of SK Bukit Rambai, the Honorable Mr. Ben Hill, the Head of School, come Managing Director, come CEO of Oasis International School, to the respected Mr. Azlan bin Abdul Hamid, the Co-Curricular Unit Senior Assistant of SK Bukit Rambai, Mr. David Hooper, the Director of Athletics and Activities of Oasis International School, and last but not least, the famous and respected Head of Rugby Development of KL Tigers Football Club, KLTFRC, the one and only Mr. Gary Kane. How are you guys doing? Nice. Okay. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to this conference where in this special occasion, we are going to have a discussion on the main topic of international education and sports. We truly hope that this exchange of ideas and knowledge can benefit our students in any ways and aspects possible so that we as teachers can ensure that our students will grow up becoming a better person. Right? As we all already knew that this is a historic conference made possible by our coordinator, Mr. Shahizan bin Samiun, who just now introduced himself, who are assisted by the workaholic teachers of the Bukit Rambai. With that, I would like to thank all of you for your utmost cooperation. Okay. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Hashim bin Hussein as the host of this conference to give his welcoming speech. Okay, saya ingin menjemput yang berusaha, Hashim bin Hussein, untuk menyampaikan ucapan luar-luar. The screen is yours, sir. Silakan.
Okay. Dengar clear?
Yep, clear.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning. Okay. Thank you for Mr. Gary, okay, Mr. Ben, and Mr. David, and all of you. You are welcome to in conference. Okay. Pendidikan berkualiti dan terdidik, negara sejahtera is a vision of Malaysia. I am Mr. Hashim bin Hussein. I am Master.
Fine, thank you.
SK Bukit Rambai, Melaka. You know, in SK Bukit Rambai, about 37 classes in the school and about 1,143 students. In the school, in my school lah. Dan kita juga mempunyai seramai 85 orang guru lah. I hope in conference kerjasama antara Rabi Antarabangsa England ini bersama Sekolah Kebangsaan Bukit Rambai ini terus menaikkan sukan sekolah dan juga dalam pendidikan di Bukit Rambai ini. Sekian, terima kasih.
Alright, thank you, Mr. Hashim bin Hussein, Headmaster of SK Bukit Rambai, for the welcoming speech. Right? Okay. Before we proceed to the main event, now is the time for all of 5 of our dear panelists to introduce yourselves briefly for about 1 minute or so. Okay, you just need to tell us bits about yourselves or some interesting facts that we need to know. Right. So with that, we will start with the Honorable Mr. Ben Hill. Please, Mr. Ben Hill, the screen is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you I just want to thank Mr. Hashim for organizing this event, and Mr. Azlan and Sekolah Kebangsaan Bukit Rambai. I've been to that school because my son has played in a few tournaments at that school, and you guys put on a great tournaments there. So I appreciate that. My name is Ben Hale. I'm the head of school at Oasis International School. I've lived in Malaysia for 8 years now, and we love it here. We're planning on staying a long time. I've also been a coach for high school basketball, high school volleyball, and high school rugby. So as well as being a head of school, my history also has a lot of coaching and American schools. Oasis is an American school, and sporting culture is very important for us. And so that's looking forward to talking about some of that today. So thank you very much.
Interesting. All right, thank you, Mr. Ben. Some interesting facts there. You were saying about basketball, rugby. What about soccer, Mr. Ben?
Not my sport.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you, Mr. Ben. All right, next we will proceed with Mr. David Hoover. Okay, Mr. David Hoover, who is the director of the athletics and activities of Oasis International School. Please, Mr. David.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much for having me as well. It's exciting to talk about sports for a little bit and just what they mean to school. This is, I believe, my 9th year in education. I worked in elementary PE and then with students with disabilities back in the US. And then now I've been in Malaysia. This is my 3rd year. My sports background is a little bit of everything, but primarily basketball and soccer or football.
Okay.
They say here, yeah.
Okay. Right.
So I like a little bit of everything. So excited to talk about it today.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. David. What's your favorite food, Mr. David, here in Malaysia?
And it's hard to beat just a roti, dessert, a roti,
Okay.
something like that for breakfast.
Yeah.
Hard to beat.
All right. Sure. Thank you, Mr. David. All right. Now we will straight away go to the Honorable Mr. Hashim bin Hussein, who is the HM of SK Bukit Rambai, for him to tell us some tidbits about him and some interesting facts that our panelists can get to know here. Please, Mr. Hashim bin Hussein.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I am 28 in education.
Wow.
But this year I am Master SK Bukit Rambai. I would like in sport, many sport lah. About soccer, hockey, basketball, volleyball, and everything lah. Okay, saya juga adalah jurulatih bola sepak, bola tampar bagi sekolah-sekolah di Melaka.
Okay.
Tapi tidaklah sampai ke peringkat international atau bangsaan. Okay, thank you, moderator.
All right. Okay, thank you, the Honorable Mr. Hashim bin Hussein. Okay, Mr. Hashim bin Hussein here for your information. Our dear panelists, he represented Malacca Teachers Football Club football team, and he played all over the country during his younger days. All right, and now we will pass the message to Mr. Azlan bin Abdul Hamid, who is the head of SKBR co-curricular unit. Mr. Azlan, the screen is yours.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear you?
Hello. Yeah. We can hear
Hello.
you. Yep.
Okay. Very good. Good. Assalamualaikum and very good morning. First of all, to all the panelists today, Mr. Hashim Hussein, the headmaster of SK Bukit Rambai, Mr. Benjamin Hale, the head of the Oasis International School, Mr. David Hoover, the athlete and activities director, and Mr. Gary Kane, the head of rugby development Kuala Lumpur. Okay, so first of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Azlan Abdul Hamid. I'm from Johor, this is the southern part of the Malaysia. I've been teaching for the 16 years. Just promoted to the co-curriculum senior assistant for the past 2 years. and now I just transferred from my old school to here, and thank you, because this is the very fantastic year to all of us, especially in the rugby development, to go ahead for the more improving, and our target for this year is going to for the international level. Okay, thank you for meanwhile. Back to you, Mr. Azhar.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Azlan. Interesting facts there. Okay. Now, the best is always saved for last. Please, Mr. Gary, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for the build-up. It's much appreciated. It's an honour to be here with such prestigious guests, and I only hope that I can offer some insight and some of the things that I've learned over the years, maybe that will help you and help your listeners. So I've been in Malaysia now since 1997. I got into the side of rugby that I'm in now back in 2007. We've as an organization, we've developed from, you know, maybe 150 players to nearly 600 players now. The role that I play in the club is something that I'm quite passionate about, which is rugby development. So the idea being to develop the game. It's everything to do with the game, how we work as coaches, how the players are coached, what the curriculum is, and how we behave as coaches, I guess. I'm also a World Rugby coach educator and have been since 2015. So I run courses educating coaches, putting them through their certification, level 1, level 2. I'm a level 3 coach, a licensed coach in Malaysia. Yeah, this is actually something that I do in my spare time as well. So I have a day job. So I run a business here in the financial services industry.
Okay.
So some of the things that I have from my own business experience and corporate life, I'm able to bring into the coaching side as well, and vice versa, which I think is probably an important part of maybe some of the things I'll talk about today.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Gary. Dah. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Gary. You are so decorated there. All right. All right, then. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the first speaker, the Honorable Mr. Ben Hill, to speak on the application of education applied at Oasis International School. All right, Mr. Ben Hill, the screen is yours.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to talk about a little bit of how education and athletics and sports interact together. The important part that really what we try to do at Oasis and a lot of schools is match the important thing to think about is what is the school's mission and vision. That's the thing that goes around all of the things that decisions in the school, whether it's about regular curriculum, but it also should be important to match sports with the school's mission and vision so that it's not a separate type of thing. And so, what sports are chosen, how the sports are implemented, how the training is done, how much funds are used for sports, and how what we want the goal of sports to be is very important, that it matches the vision of the school itself. And so at our school, leadership is one of our important things, one of our core values. And so an example would be how do we integrate the aspect of leadership into sports? And so we're teaching kids not only to follow and listen, be good listeners, but also to step up and become leaders within their group as they get older, and how to do that in a good way so that they can take those skills they learn in sports and use them for their whole life. Only a few athletes can play sports at a university level or professional level, but many students can benefit from learning the things that sports will teach them, like the leadership aspect, working hard, and being able to be on a team, learning how to lose gracefully, learning how to win well, and
learning how to lose.
All of these things we can use in life. And so that's really the main thing that we're trying to help students learn, and that matches the vision and mission of the school and organization. So yeah.
All right, Mr. Ben Hill, thank you for your speech on the education and sports conference. All right, you were saying leadership are the important aspects of your schools. How many teachers do you have in your school, Mr. Ben, altogether?
We have about 37 teachers.
37. All locals, or?
No, actually, we have a mix of teachers. We have about 70% of our teachers are Americans, and then we have a mix of local teachers and teachers from other English-speaking countries that are trained to teach in American schools.
All right. Okay. So how do you choose them? How do you choose them to be the educator to be the tutor in your school? Do they have to go through any exams or interviews, or some sports or whatsoever?
That's a good question. So for our teachers, the most important thing that they have to do as qualifying is have an American education certificate. And so they have to be trained in the American system in order to qualify. Also at our school, even if our school is a little bit different in that many international schools go kindergarten all the way up through grade 12, which is like a final year. It's like A levels, same as British. So we have teachers and students from 4 years old all the way up to 18 years old on campus. 18 years old. But we also encourage teachers that are maybe primary school teachers to coach high school sports. And so they can cross and meet students from different areas of the school. And so we want for teachers that not only teach, but want to be involved in other aspects of co-curricular activities.
Okay, all right. So how many students do you have altogether?
We're a pretty new school. We're only in our third year here in Malaysia.
Okay.
And we have about 250 students right now.
250 okay. So most of them are locals.
About our highest number are locals. We have about 35% of our students are Malaysian, and then after that, we have 20 different countries in our school.
Okay, all right, 20 different countries. All right, Mr. Ben Hill, thank you so much. Some very interesting facts there. Okay, we will get back to you later, Mr. Ben. I have so many questions to ask you. All right, now we will proceed to our next speaker, who is the headmaster of SK Bukit Rambai. All right, he is going to speak on the same subject matter, but a bit different. But he's going to speak on the education in Malaysia and in SK Bukit Rambai as a whole. All right. So, Mr. Hashim, the screen is yours.
Off mic.
Tak.
I cannot pause it.
Ni? Call that.
Can you please say sorry?
Sorry, our dear panelists. I will rectify the technical problem. All right.
You might tell.
Okay, Mr. Hashim, your mic is off.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
And in Bukit Rambai, this must focus for pendidikan abad ke-21 lah, 21st century. Pendidikan di Malaysia berfokus kepada sekarang kemahiran murid. Kita lihat kepada kemahiran murid itu sendiri. Mana ala tuju murid itu. Sekarang kita dapat melihat the student where to go in the future. Okay. Dan sekarang ni kita menjurus kepada pendidikan STEM. Menjurus pada STEM iaitu kita berfokus pada sains, teknologi, engineering and mathematics. Di Malaysia lah. Waktu kita ada sekali lagi, kita di Malaysia got TVET, teknologi, vocational, education and technology. Sebab sekarang ni Malaysia menjurus kepada kemajuan pada masa hadapan. Berfokus kepada kemenjadian murid. Jadi all student must go for about technology. About sport, in Bukit Rambai, it focus to rugby. Sport in rugby because to the international atau peringkat kebangsaan, kita mahu murid kita pergi lebih jauh dan mengenali sukan rugby ini. Sebab tu kita adakan kolaborasi dengan international school. Mr. Bell and Mr. Gary, Mr. David, they want joint venture for you, and I hope your school can bring me about something from your school, can bekerjasama bagaimana kita nak menaikkan nama sekolah kita in the sport of education. Okay, thank you. Okay, Cik Azlan, Cikgu Khairul.
Alright, thank you, Mr. Hashim, for your brief speech on education in Malaysia and SK Bukit Rambai as a whole. Right? For your information, dear panelists, okay, Mr. Hashim was saying about the focus of our school of SK Bukit Rambai. Mainly, we are focusing on technologies because our current teaching and learning sessions are all carried out using technologies, and we hope that we can put rugby at another level, and that is why he is very honored to have to be involved in this very historic conference, right? And to have a collaboration and long-term cooperation with Western International School and KLTFRC. All right. So thank you once again, Mr. Hashim. All right, next we will straight away go to Mr. Azlan's speech. He will be speaking on the implementation of sports and activities in SK Bukit Rambai. Perhaps some history to share with Oasis International School and KLTFRC. Please, Mr. Azlan.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Khairul. Okay. What happened in the development of the education in Malaysia now? They are focusing not only the academic, but now they are focusing to the activities such as sports and also any co-academic like choir, acting, singing, and all that. That's what happened in the scenario because as the government is focusing to create the people's, the students to more multifunctional, know everything about the skill of life and all whatsoever. So in the sport of our school, we are focusing on the development of the peoples. For example, if the history part, we are excellent in the football. But well, football is just the popular sport. So we move on to the rugby because we see the potential there. Even there's a funny fact about the rugby, because the rugby is a old game such as football, badminton, and all that. But it's hard to my people. I ask who is the one of the greatest player of the rugby. They cannot answer. But if I ask about the football, they can give me hundreds people, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and all that. That's the scenario that we are going to change afterwards. Okay, so we see the potential of the rugby. So we hope, because we are focusing, rugby is our focus for the next 5 years. This is focus for next 5 years, and we hope with the cooperation with Oasis International School, we hope that you can help us how to help and guide us, guide my teachers, guide my staff, how we are going to have a master plan or blueprint to helping us to achieve our achievement for the international level. So I stop here and back to you, Khairul Azhar.
All right, thank you, Mr. Azlan, for your speech. You were talking about when you asked the students or our players name any famous rugby player, they couldn't name one. When asked about football player, they can name hundreds of them. All right. So that I will later ask that question to Mr. Gary Kane. So Mr. Gary Kane, please be prepared for that question. All right. Now, we are passing the baton to the Director of Athletics and Activities of Oasis International School, Mr. David Hoover. Mr. David Hoover, the screen is yours.
Sure. Well, I'll talk a little bit about just kind of what we're trying to instill. Like Ben mentioned, Mr. Hale, we're a new school. This is our 3rd year. And so we're still kind of driving what we want our sports teams and sports cultures to look like. We're constantly trying to figure out what it looks like to train our coaches to instill our core values in our sports teams, and just what that looks like. We try to focus on a few different team sports and get students excited about that. And we're also looking constantly at, can we travel a little bit and make it an international trip where we're playing competitions against like-minded schools or like schools similar to our size and our ability. That's something that always gets students excited. In the U.S., my experience seeing sports in schools as a tool that really brought a lot of school community together and just allowed them to have kind of a rallying point where it didn't matter what kind of friend group you fit into, you came to the sporting event because that was kind of your pride and your school out there. And so it gave something for students to kind of look forward to all week, kind of being the center point. And that's something that we're working towards here in Oasis. I think we have some good momentum. Obviously, all of us are kind of pressing pause on the sports for the last 6 months or so, or a year, with the pandemic and all of the effects of that. But we're excited to start as soon as we're able. And I've constantly getting questions from students about, when can we start? What does it look like? Can we play this sport? Can we play this sport? So the interest is there, and I think it's definitely needed. So I'm excited to get that moving again as soon as possible.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. David. One question, Mr. David. Okay, as you know, if you are an athlete, you are playing sports in America. Okay, you have this before you enroll into the big picture, before you become a famous athlete, you try to gain scholarships in your college. So do you have that kind of thing here in Oasis International School? Do they get scholarship for this the students who excel in sports?
Sure. I mean, we are so early in the program, so we haven't had one that we can point to, but we do have a guidance counselor that is great at connecting students with universities and showing them what opportunities are there for scholarships. Athletic scholarships are one of them. It's a way that students that are kind of motivated academically can really be motivated athletically. So it is something that I know our partner schools have done a lot. We've only had 2 graduating classes, quite small so far, so we're not quite there yet, but we are working towards it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's one thing that I need to ask you later. How we the schools in Malaysia can work towards that kind of scholarships later on, right? And one more thing, since diet is one of the most important elements in sports, how do you at Oasis International School mainly assess on that? You have canteen right there
with diet.
So what do they serve there?
Yeah, our cafeteria does consider those things. We have kind of a Western option and an Asian option each day at lunch. It's something that we're working towards a health curriculum, and all of our PE teachers, where PE is required for every age level, and all of them have at least some units where they're talking about what kind of things nutritionally your body needs in order to achieve the highest level of performance. Then we focus on it in a more advanced, in a course like I'm teaching with upper level high school. We talk about how nutrition is kind of the foundation for everything you can achieve physically. So it is something that we consider, and then they get to kind of be in charge of it when they go to the cafeteria and look at what foods can I pick to give my body everything it needs.
All right, I like that health curriculum. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. David. We'll get back to you later. All right, and on to our final panelist, the one that everyone is waiting for. Right, the great Mr. Gary Kane, who is going to share with us his knowledge and the greater experience in the field of rugby. I assume he has a lot to share with us. Go ahead, Mr. Gary.
Good morning. Thank you. So one of the things that I think it's probably important to establish at the beginning is that, although our program started in 2007, attached to another club, in 2014, we became KL Tigers. We also tied up with Leicester Tigers, which is a premiership rugby club in England. Very long history going back to the 1800s. And the point of that tie-up was really to share resources and understanding and look for the professionalism that could be brought into our club. So back in 2014, 2015, we undertook a review, a real sort of internal look at ourselves as a club. We were of a reasonable size at that point, maybe 300 or so players. We'd been successful in the Selangor League at men's level. We'd been successful all the way through our age group. So we really wondered what that review would be, what the results would be. And it was quite interesting that the development officer that came from Leicester Tigers and spent 2 years with us, he identified that what we needed to do, and our starting point was to really look at what the values and the culture of the club were. Why did we exist? What did we want to achieve? I think Ben mentioned earlier about a mission of the school.
Yep.
We needed to establish what our mission was as a club. And once we'd done that, it was a case of then working through those values and what the mission was through the coaches, through to the players, and how we worked. So it was really interesting. I thought that, rather than a professional club coming in and saying, well, technically you could be doing this, or from a coaching point, you could be doing that. What they did was they addressed our actual structure and really our mindset as a club. And obviously the mindset does come from the management team and the founders. So I think it's really important that, you know, any organization that is involved in sport has their mission and their values right. And from that, a lot of the benefits of sport can waterfall from. It also allows you to establish good behaviors with your coaches. It enables us to sort of build a positive curriculum that focuses very much on development. You know, our mission, if you like, our club goal was effectively, we wanted to offer the best that we could. So you hear a lot of organizations say they want to be the best, or they want to achieve titles, or they want to be the biggest, or any of those things. They're quite sort of typical goals that people tend to set, but we actually wanted to offer the best. So, and that's the mindset that we really wanted to get across to everybody. So rather than looking for, we want to win this competition, or we want to win that competition, or we want to have so many people in our club, we wanted to offer the best. And the funny thing is, as a consequence of doing that, we have grown to one of the biggest, and we do win titles, and we do. So, you know, it's sort of reversing the typical flow. You know, if you set yourselves up to do the right thing, everything else will come to you.
All right. Mr. Gary, what's the challenge in changing the mindset, like you mentioned earlier? What are the challenges that you think is stopping ataupun is slowing the mindset changing of these players?
Well, actually, so if you think about it, children they just absorb what is around them, and most of the time their interaction with their coach, or their interaction with their teacher, or their interaction with their parents, where they get a lot of their value and also their mindset. So the funny thing is I think the headmaster mentioned you had 1,143 students. So the easiest way to affect change and behavior in a positive way on those 1,143 students is not to actually work with the students, it's actually to work with the teachers and the coaches, and also as well the parents. So, you know, a big part of what we've done as far as communication is concerned, is to try and communicate the values not only of rugby but also of the club and our development program and what we're trying to achieve to parents, so that their behavior is modified and their mindset changes to a positive one that's supportive of what we do, and if it helps change the mindset of the players.
Okay. So currently, in your KLT FRC, how many players do you have?
So obviously, we've just gone through a pandemic, so we haven't really been able to get together fully as a club for 1 year. We have had 4 months of practice back in July last year, and then obviously CMCO came back in. We restarted training again only a few weeks ago. And that was for part of the club. We're rolling out another part of the club in another couple of weeks, and we're hoping to be back fully as a club, and that means the 4-year-olds all the way to which is 50. So the thing is that we will need to see everybody on the field. We'll need everybody to re-sign as a member, see what we've got. But I would say the number is still around that 500 figure, 500. We got close to 600 at one point. And the funny thing is that whereas before we used to have lots and lots of children, now the biggest growing area of our club is the adult sections.
Adult section. So how many coaches do you have? For 600 players, how many coaches do you have?
Well, so at our peak, we had 72.
Wow. And they are all qualified coaches?
Well, so my mission, if you like, as a World Rugby coach educator, was to basically get everybody to a level 1 standard. We, at the last count, we had around about 6 or 7 people that hadn't taken the course. So only about 10% of our coaches hadn't taken the course. So we've got about, now we have somewhere around about 20 level 2 coaches. Yes, apart from the 7 that I mentioned are level 1. And we have 3 level 3.
3 level 3. Okay, all right. So your training sessions are done during weekdays or weekends?
So we have a mixture. So adult training tends to take place in the week, normally 2 times. So traditionally Tuesdays and Thursdays. We also train our academy, which is our under 15 to under 18 group, during the midweek session, and then again on a Saturday. And on Saturday is our main junior training. So all age group in the junior section from age 4 to 18 train for between an hour and a half and 2 hours on a Saturday.
Okay, all right. So perhaps our school, SK Bukit Rambai, can be your adopted school.
Of course.
We can get all the experience and all the coaching that you can offer us. Thank you so much, Mr. Gary Kane, on your speech on the development of rugby. With that, okay. Thank you everyone for the interesting knowledge and ideas as well as experience shared. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the Q&A session. For this particular session, please note that the questionnaire sent by the audience will appear on your screen. All right. I will assign the question to any of the panelists. So, any question yet? Mr. Ben. Okay, there's a question for Mr. Ben Hill. All right. Do TPA contribute in helping school achievement? Mr. Ben?
TPA, help me with that. I'm not sure if I know what that.
Teacher Parents Association.
Okay. So we all call that different things in different places.
Yes, exactly.
So yes, it's very important to have parent involvement. Parents really need to see the benefits when it comes to what do sports bring to my kids. Some parents, of course, are saying they want, they want their kids to study hard and do all that. But we also need to show how important it is for students to have a good balance between academics and activities. And so showing parents that and saying this is a benefit for your child. It will also benefit when they go to university and shows the student has good balance and they're not only staying in their room studying all the time, but they have balance with activities where they're with other students and interacting well and taking opportunities for leadership and like things like that. So yes, and Gary mentioned this as well, in that getting all the different areas involved in believing in what is important about sports, especially the teachers, the parents, so that those are the people that the students listen to the most, the teachers and their parents. And so for them to understand and believe in those things is very important. So yes, parent-teacher organizations are critical for helping to be successful in that area for sure.
All right. And Mr. Ben, does Oasis International School align with the Ministry of Education in Malaysia? Do you have anything to do with the MOE?
Yes, we are registered with the Ministry of Education in the private and international school division. So we work with them quite a lot on various things. They visit our school. Any kind of collaboration that they would like us to do with local schools, we're always glad to participate. But we work with the private and international school division.
Okay, registered with MOE. Okay, under private school. Okay, right. Next. One question. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ben. All right, for Mr. Gary, to Mr. David, sorry. How do your school makes practice fun? You look fun.
So, fun is a key principle in all of our training, and the way that we tend to make the practice fun is we use games.
Okay.
So games form probably 75-80% of the training. Games form 75% of the training that we put in place. And obviously, if you're playing a game, to be enjoyment, there tends to be fun, but then also there are challenges for the individual as well as the team. So you can get a lot out of a game-based training program.
Okay.
So
do you have any?
Go on,
sorry. Go ahead.
So some of the games that we play aren't necessarily a game of rugby.
Okay.
For example, but they may have a skill that is transferable to the game of rugby. So it could be anticipation, it could be awareness, it could be scanning, looking, it could be catch and pass, movement. All of those things can obviously challenge the individual player, but contribute to their skill set, but then will help them with their game of rugby.
Okay, so it covers all aspects needed to be a good athlete. Do you have any specific module for these fun activities?
Yes, in fact, so starting back in 2015, once we had established our values and our mission and the goals that the club wanted to achieve, we then went about an education program to get our coaches certified. But that's only one stage. What we then had to do was establish a curriculum and how that curriculum would be delivered, and that took several years to put in place. But we've been running that now, since 2017.
2017. Okay, that's the last one. Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Gary. Mr. David, on the same question, what about Oasis International School?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the same things that Mr. Gary just mentioned are what we do as well. I would add just the element of competition, because a lot of our students want to beat the guy next to them or want to beat the girl next to them during practice. So making it as competitive as possible, and really pushing them in that way, because that's what we want our teams to be able to achieve as well. So competition's a huge one. I really draw on a lot of my physical education teaching experience as well to do things like sport education, which is kind of small-sided games, so dividing your team into small-sided teams and then assigning roles and then letting them try to accomplish goals or compete with evenly matched teams. So adding in the element of competition is something we try to add in every day. That's a big part of it.
All right, thank you. So have Oasis International School participated in any competition before, in any sports?
Yeah, so we've done we've mostly done friendlies around the area with international schools. We've also been up to Penang. Yeah, for a tournament up there with about 5 or 6 other international schools. Club teams in the area were invited as well. And then we were actually slated to do a international tournament over in Taiwan this year, which got canceled. So that's a bummer, but we're hoping to resurrect that next year or in the near future.
All right. Do you have enough players? We can send some players here.
Yeah, we do have enough players. We haven't had too many teams that we've had to not have. Some of the girls' teams, we're still kind of convincing girls to jump up and join, but most of the boys' teams, we have enough.
Okay. So you play in friendlies for rugby, right?
Not quite yet. We haven't had that yet.
Okay. All right. So if you train rugby in your school to Mr. David and Mr. Gary, what kind of technique do you apply? Is it touch rugby or tackle? Mr. Gary?
So we have the full spectrum of the game. So whether it's different age grades, you play different styles of rugby. So for the very young, up until under 8, that will play a version of touch rugby, modified to complement what they will do later into the contact game. And we have a touch section as well. So just touch rugby, same as or touch football as people sometimes call it. And then from under 9 all the way through, you can basically play contact rugby. We play 7, we play 10s, we play 15 aside, and we're also getting involved in X rugby and beach rugby as well. So it's very time for the game.
How is beach rugby played, Mr. David? Mr. Gary, sorry.
It's actually it is a contact game. So there is tackle involved. It's done on a smaller pitch with a smaller number of players. The way that the game restarts after infringements is slightly modified, but it's meant to be very quick. It's meant to be in an environment which might draw in different crowds, different followers, you play it barefooted in the sand.
Yeah, barefooted. I was going to ask you that. So, what is your advice and what is your suggestion? When do we start applying tackle rugby to grassroots level? When is the best? When is the best period to teach them tackle?
Well, it is an interesting question, because what we found is the earlier that you can introduce how to tackle, what you're actually doing is you're taking out a lot of the risks. If you try to the physics that are actually involved, the weight, the speed, impact, also as well the distance between someone who's maybe 6 or 7 years of age falling on the floor is much smaller. So we can teach good practice at a young age, and if you learn at a young age, as long as it's controlled, as long as it's not done in a competitive manner, those understandings, those skills are embedded. It means that later on, as the game develops, the children already have the skills, and then they acquire their physical development. They're better equipped to handle the situation. So we start to introduce tackle at the beginning of under 8. So
under 8.
Yeah. So at 7 years of age, we start to introduce it, but it's only the actual tackle itself. It's not anything else to do with the contact game. There's no scrums, there's no rucks, there's nothing else. It's
just the basic rugby, right?
Yeah, just the basic tackle.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Gary. And Mr. David, you are the director of athletics and activities. Why is athletics, Mr. David? Can you please specify on that?
Yeah, so our athletics program, we're really talking about our secondary students, so middle school and above, older. These are competitive team sports generally, and so the practices will be 4 and 5 times a week. There'll be competitions
Okay.
potentially on the weekend. Activities is for our younger primary age students, and that's more targeting them, just getting them exposed to different activities. It could be sports, it could be arts and crafts or music, something like that, just to get them exposed to it and find out what they like.
So what about your facilities there? Can you please describe us the facilities that you have there, Mr. Ben or Mr. David? In terms of your sport facilities.
Oh, facilities, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a fantastic facility. It's the nicest gym and space that I've ever been able to teach in. Two full-size basketball courts. We can comfortably fit 6 badminton courts on those as well. We have a large weight room that we do CrossFit style work with all of our PE classes and all of our sports teams. Can also fit at least 2 volleyball courts comfortably. And then our field is a wide open space, so there's plenty of room to grow. We fit 2 77 size football fields or soccer fields on it, or we can do one 11v11 game if we have 11v11.
Wow, that's huge.
And rugby, same thing. We have the posts and we have space to do plenty.
All right, that's quite interesting facilities you have there, Mr. David. All right, for Mr. Ben, maybe how do you evaluate people's achievement in curricular and sports in terms of merit?
So yeah, that's a great question. For sports, the sports program is integrated into our school in that we have made our physical education program be designed so that it exposes the students to the sports that we have. And so for them, they're going to be playing the same sports in their physical education classes that we offer in the secondary school. And so they can see very young, starting from 4 or 5 years old, they get exposed to the sports that we have in the higher levels as well, are competitive. This is also important that students, not all students are athletes and want to do sports, and so finding places where students are able to find something they're excited about and passionate about is important. So a lot of our students are drawn toward art or music or drama or things like that. And so we want to make sure those things are also available. Measuring achievement, of course, a lot of what we're doing, it is a co-curricular activity. So secondary sports is not given any kind of grade or anything like that, but we do have special awards, and students are recognized season by season for their achievements in leadership and various other things that they do on their team. And so we do recognize individuals for their achievements for whatever season they're competing in. So maybe for basketball season, we'll have 3 special awards for each team, so the students can be recognized for what they've done during their season. This is for the American school system. This is important for students when they go to university, because universities want to see balance. And so for them, academics are important, but also seeing how is a student balance their life and with other things. And so being able to show achievement in not only academics, but also sports shows a good balance for a student, and universities like to see that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ben. For Mr. Hashim, how do you evaluate students in terms of curriculum and sports for our students? Mr. Hashim.
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you. In my school, the student
Yes.
must be good in education. This about a curriculum of minister. Di sekolah ni kita mengharapkan murid-murid akan belajar seperti biasa dan mengikut kurikulum yang ditetapkan oleh kerajaan. Okey. Kemudian kita berfokus kepada pentadbiran bilik darjah. Kita lihat kemahiran murid itu sendiri. Ke mana hala tuju murid itu dalam bidang kemahiran masing-masing. Sebab itu kita di Malaysia ni, di Melaka atau di Sekolah Bukit Amai, kita ada pentadbiran berdasarkan bilik darjah dan juga PJSK. Itu berfokus kepada kesihatan murid, kehidupan murid, kemahiran dia dan juga segak. Itu kita nak fokus sekarang, kita tak ada berfokus pada education saja. Kita juga berfokus kepada kemahiran dalam bidang sukan. Untuk melanjutkan pelajaran ke peringkat yang lebih tinggi, pihak kementerian akan memilih murid-murid yang mempunyai tahap pendidikan yang tinggi dan juga dalam bidang kemahiran sukan yang tertentu. Sebab itulah Sekolah Kebangsaan Bukit Rambai ini ingin bekerjasama dengan OIC International School dan juga khusus untuk bidang rugby. Sebab kebanyakan kita lihat rugby is an international sport. Saya pun dalam rugby, I playing in winger. Mr. Gary, I am winger. But I afraid about tackle. Tackle from behind, we get some injured, and then I got not main rugby lah. I go to play hockey. So in Malaysia, we got a good rugby and hockey. I think more player in Malaysia now so high education in the sport. About hockey, I got BA, honors, doctor, lawyer, Malaysia player hockey. About rugby can some education was so high. So focus in Malaysia now, the player must good in education. So sport and education must seiring on online. Yes. Thank you.
Terima kasih Encik Hashim. There are questions for Mr. Gary and Mr. David. What are the key factors or principles of play? Maybe Mr. Gary answer.
Okay, so when you apply your coaching, you will use the key factors and the principles of play. Key factors are basically the components of a skill. So, for example, if I was teaching someone to pass the ball, there may be 6, 7, 8, 9 components of me passing the ball. What I'm doing with my hands, where I'm looking, how I position my feet, how I position my body. So each of those elements or each of those components are the key factors. And every skill and every part of play has key factors. So we might, for example, be coaching passing the ball, and we'll ask a player, okay, give me 3 things that are important when passing the ball. And that's a way for us as coaches to confirm learning and check for understanding. Key factors are a very important coaching tool. When you then start looking at the principles of play, the principles of play really are how the game is played. And if you like, foundation blocks. So, for example, if we do not have the ball, we have to get the ball. So that's called regain possession. We then as a player with the ball, have to go forward. Go forward is a really important principle of playing rugby. We then have to have support. We have to have continuity. We then have to apply pressure on the opposition, and eventually we will score. And those principles of play in some ways can be sequential. And if you don't get one of them right, that's when the opposition get the ball. So it's a way of teaching the game and the understanding of how it's played. And I think it simplifies matters.
Do you want to add up a little bit, Mr. David?
Sure, I can speak kind of broadly, kind of across all of the sports that we have. It'll be obviously different whether you're coaching or teaching swimming versus rugby or soccer or football, something like that. So the key factors or critical elements of each skill is going to vary widely. I'll just say generally what good teaching principles, when a lot of our students join the team, they're new to a sport or still gaining a lot of the beginner skills. And so even though there are 8 or 9 or 10 critical elements to that skill, simplifying it as much as possible is the best course of action. And so focus on in the basketball shot, just getting your elbow right underneath the ball before you shoot it. You know, folks pick one thing. Okay, they got that. They're doing that on repeat. All right, let's now focus on a different critical element for them to improve upon. And so that's just an effective way, no matter what we're teaching, that we can kind of break it down for them and do progressions that we see some more progress in.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. David. I pass it to my moderator.
Right, thank you, Mr. Shaizan. All right. This is the next question. Okay. We move forward to the next question. Hi, morning. My question is how to maintain the sport of rugby among students, teacher, and school in times of COVID pandemic. Okay, can we have perhaps Mr. David? Mr.
Yeah,
Gary, sorry, Gary. Yeah.
Oh, Gary, go ahead.
Well, obviously, it's. I think this pandemic has really made us all think, you know, to how we can overcome certain issues with the physical distancing that we have, and we have to abide by. So, obviously, we have to follow what the government tells us we need to do and when we can basically practice. What we tried to do as a club was continually engage players. And I think you mentioned earlier that you wanted to use technology more in your sports coaching and your sports training. That's something that we've had to do, and we had to learn really, really quickly. So our head coach, our full-time coach, spent a lot of time creating videos which were specific skill challenges that would enable a player on their own, without any interaction with anybody else, to practice. And the skills that they were doing could be executed using even some sports socks rolled up in a ball. Or it could have been some sort of fitness challenge. Some agility challenge or a speed challenge. So back in April, May of last year, we started to engage the players from all ages. Some of the very younger ones, we were getting them to do something that was much more fun. Some of the slightly older ones, it was more challenging. And those physical challenges could be done inside the home. You didn't even need to go outside. That was one way. The other way was that we started to realise that with all our players effectively away from the sports field, there was a lack of activity in our club. and that's a concern. You know, in order to play rugby, you need to be conditioned, you need to be prepared physically, and if you don't have any activity, that physical preparedness drops. So what we started to do was we started to do strength and conditioning sessions online using Zoom, and these would be done several times a week for all age groups. The good effect that we had with this was even mums and dads actually joined in the program. So everybody in the house was actually getting fitter, which was good. And then, you know, initially last June and July, the Ministry of Sports came out with a number of SOPs that allowed us to practice individual skills, but we had to maintain distancing. So what we had to do was come up with a group of activities, a practice plan that would enable us to meet the SOPs but still deliver a rugby program, which we did. And we did that for several weeks in a distanced way, with 3 meters and 5 meters for static and dynamic activities. But it has made us think very, very hard about what we can do. It's not just about what the kids do on the field. It's also about what happens when they leave the field, making sure they're physically distanced, they're sanitizing, you know, the temperature check, all of those sort of things. So it's been everything.
All right. What about you, Mr. Ben? What is your say on this question?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Gary mentioned is true for schools as well.
Exactly.
I think a difficult part is part of school culture is being able to compete and do things like that. That's part of the school experience. And so a lot of our students feel lost. Some people lost something during this time. And we really are trying to help our students have hope that things are on the way, that we're doing everything that we can, and then also give them some things they can do as they are patient and waiting for us to be able to do some of these things again. So it's also helping the students to think about it in a positive way, and also give them hope for what is coming next. Because I think a lot of our students and children are facing sort of a thing that they've lost within their experience in school. And for us as a school, that is definitely there. Something that our students really want to do again is to engage in sports. And so we're doing our best to prepare, and as soon as we're able to do that, be able to offer that again for students, so that they can have that experience in school, which is an important part. I think all of you probably have memories of playing school and sports with your friends and coaches. That's a part of your educational career. And so we don't want our kids to lose that. And so we're trying to be positive as we wait for the next step and for things like this to pass, and just doing our best to support our students in that way.
All right. Sid, here in our school, early in the morning, before the students enter the school, the teachers will wait for them at the front gate. They will sanitize them, each and every student before they enter the school. They will check their temperature. Do you do that there, Mr. Ben?
SOPs for SK Bukit Rimbai and us are the same.
Are the same. All right. Excellent. All right. Wonderful.
We do all the same things. I think for the Ministry of Education, it's the same across the board. So yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ben. For Mr. Azlan, the next question is for Mr. Azlan. Mr. Azlan, is there any specific target for school curriculum?
Yeah.
Yeah. Question for you: is there any specific target?
Specific target. Okay. Okay. In the school curriculum, we have a specific target. The first target is our rugby team, and we are going to involve and want to expand it to the international level. In other sport, for example, for footballs and track and field, we are targeting go for the national level. And then for the others is we are just focusing to make it our co-curriculum activities in our schools more interesting. That is some aspect our targeting in the curriculum in our school. Okay, can I ask a question to Mr. Gary or
Yes,
David?
yes, you may. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Azlan. Go ahead.
Okay. There's a stigma from the, especially from the parents. The parents, because we are going to develop from the starting, from the year from the 7 or 8 years old people. But the parents seems that the rugby is a rough sport. Got tackling, afraid to have broken here, broken there. Then after that, coming back from the school with the dirty and all that, with the bruises and all that. So how you as an experienced coach, can you share how you overcome with this situation with the parents? Thank you.
So this is the thing, going back to what I said at the start, the biggest thing that we can do is educate coaches. If we educate coaches to work on a best practice basis, that practice is going to be done in the safest way possible. Introduction of skills, especially contact skills, will be done progressively and in a safe environment. And World Rugby has a mission really to make the sport a lot safer. A lot of the injuries that we see possibly on the TV, they are starting to reduce down. A lot of the laws and a lot of the rules of the game are changing to make it a safer sport. We're trying to tackle concussion, which is a bit of a catchphrase, but we're trying to tackle concussion by reducing the height of the tackle. So as a sport, we are trying very, very hard to minimize the amount of injuries that take place. We as a club have to register and log any injuries that take place on our field. If there's an injury during our tournament, our Malaysian Rugby doctors, appointed doctors, will be there. They do a report on the injury, and we also do a review of what is happening, and whether or not there was an issue with a player, whether or not it was to do with coaching, whether it was to do with the match official. I'm really trying to sort of pinpoint where an injury developed. Was it just pure accidental? Or was it malicious, or could we do something to improve it or to eradicate it in the future? So we take injuries very, very seriously. But what I would say is this: is that most of the kids that come to rugby turn up with injuries from other sports, and we've got one particular boy who I think has broken his arm 3 times playing football. He plays very, very strongly and very courageously in rugby, and he's never injured himself once playing rugby. We had 2 boys who actually, brothers that were chasing each other around the house and slipped over on the tiled floors and hurt themselves at home. And they never hurt themselves at rugby. So, I think it's an engagement thing. I think there are perceptions. It is a physical sport, but I think we engage with parents and we show them how we introduce the tackle skill. I think they will take some comfort from it and understanding that it's best practice, and the way that the coaching is done is going to mean their child is going to be safe.
Right. So what about you, David? Mr. David, what is your say on the question? Pupils are afraid to play rugby because they are afraid they might get hurt. They might, like what Mr. Gary just mentioned earlier, broken his arm. So how do you encourage these people and how do you motivate them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have an athletics handbook that our school has developed that we are kind of pushing out to parents and students to be more aware of. And I remember reading a section of that even says, we take every precaution necessary, but injuries still do happen. And so, students are aware of that. Parents are aware of that. Most of them, we haven't had a lot of pushback on that, especially with the sports that we offer. And so hasn't been a major issue right now, but like Mr. Gary said, it's, training the coaches on especially concussions is a thing that you always want to watch for anytime there's a bump to the head. That's something we know a little bit more about now, and so we want to keep an extra eye on. So making sure coaches know what to look for, and that coaches are trained in the ways to just keep kids as safe as possible. That's all we can really do.
So you are saying that all the parents in your school they are okay if their children tend to get injured or or broken arms, broken legs. They are okay with that because they are already briefed and they already told earlier that based on the handbook that you have, they're okay with that.
I don't know if they're okay with it. I don't think anyone likes to have a broken arm, but they are aware that it's a possibility. Yeah. So,
all right.
I don't know that they're okay with it, but
there hasn't been any cases. There hasn't been any police report.
Oh, we've had injuries. Yeah, we've had kids break it, but I mean, it happens in PE class when he's just running a non-contact injury. We had a kid break his ankle because he was running down the basketball court. I don't even know. I still don't know. Yeah, he just ran and broke his ankle, and so we wheeled him out, and his parents were fine. Injuries do happen, and we do the best we can to spot them and take care of kids as they happen. But sometimes we still get injuries, and they happen for a reason, and we recover, and we're stronger for it. So
it's a contact sport after all.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a question from our honorable headmaster of SK Bukit Ramai. Perhaps Mr. Gary, why does England rugby team, the national rugby team, they use red rose as their emblem or logo? Why? Because if you notice, the English soccer team, they have 3 lions, right? So why does England national rugby team, they have red roses? Why? A question from our honorable headmaster, Mr. Hashim. Why is that?
Well, actually, if you go back in history, the history of England, so obviously we have the United Kingdom, the flag is the Union Jack. When you go to the different parts of the United Kingdom, each of them has different flags. When you look historically, and I mean really historically, the 3 lions that the football team use is symbolic to something from history previously. And also, when you look at the rose actually was representing one of the counties of England way back. And also from a county from where one of the kings came from. So we had the War of the Roses back in the Tudor time.
All right.
Yeah, so you had the white rose and you had the red rose. You also had Richard the Lionheart, which is where the lions come from. And you're talking about medieval times when things we probably think were actually almost mythical now. Like knights, so knights would have a coat of arms. They would have so those symbols are still used, and I guess it's a way of sort of harnessing the power of the past and a bit of pride and having pride in the badge, etc. But the red rose is symbolic. It's being used for rugby. The red cross is used sometimes in football. Rugby.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the history explanation. All right. Having saying that, Mr. Gary, who's your favorite football English Premier League team?
My favorite football team.
English Premier League team. Who is your favorite English Premier League team? Which team do you support?
So the thing is I used to play football, not professionally.
Wow.
I played
Okay.
every Sunday as an amateur.
Okay.
But I never really supported a team when I was younger. My dad wasn't into football. He never sort of took me to football games or anything. So I never really had a team. But when I met my wife, she and her family were almost fanatical supporters, and I think I was under threat of injury or death at one point. That if I didn't support Tottenham Hotspur, then I wouldn't be allowed to marry into that family. So yes, I've become a very, very strong Tottenham Hotspur supporter.
Okay, I see. So you are from which part of London?
So I'm actually from southeast London. There's a very strange location called the Elephant and Castle, which is on the underground map. You'll probably see it if you look it up. But that's where I'm from, and my wife is from North London, near to Tottenham.
Tottenham. All right. Okay. Wonderful, Mr. Gary. How about you, Mr. Ben? Which English Premier Club do you support, Mr. Ben?
Maybe I'm a true rugby fan because I don't support.
Can you, okay, Mr. David? How about you? Do you support any English Premier League club?
I probably most closely followed Manchester United. So that would be Manchester United, yeah.
Yes, we are brothers. We are brothers, Mr. David. We are brothers. Mr. Azlan, quit that, Mr. Azlan. All right. Mr. Ben, okay, one question for you, Mr. Ben. What is your long-term and short-term goal settings in sports?
Short term is to basically restart sports after COVID.
Yep.
So short term is really to get things going again. It's not easy because it also depends on other schools and like their availability for playing matches and things like that, how comfortable they are, and so some of that is a bit of a challenge. So short-term wise is to get things going again. Long-term and big goals are to join a league where we can have consistent competition. Every season have competition we can count on and play the similar kinds of schools, and that be consistent, and also be able to expose our students to sports competitions and tournaments outside of Malaysia as well. And so long-term wise, that's what we'd like to do, is get something very consistent in Malaysia to compete with our local schools, and then also expose our kids to traveling outside of Malaysia to experience that kind of event as well.
All right. So like what Mr. David was saying earlier, that your school went to Penang for friendlies. Don't you want to come down to Malacca and have friendlies with us? Or perhaps likewise, we can come to your school?
Malacca is one of my favorite places. So
wow,
we'll
thank you.
be glad to coordinate something with Mr. David as well.
All right, we will work on that. Okay. All right. Okay, now we can have questions between all 5 panelists. Perhaps Mr. Ben or Mr. Gary, Mr. David, do you have any question to ask the headmaster of SKP Ramai, or perhaps Mr. Azlan?
I'll ask.
Mr. Azlan or Mr. Headmaster, have any questions you want to ask our 3 panelists? All right, Mr. Ben, go ahead, Mr. Ben.
Is it okay? I was going to ask. SK Bukit Rampai team, what are some unique challenges that government schools face when wanting to promote sports in Malaysia?
Okay, Tuan Encik Hashim, soalan tadi is about apa cabaran yang sekolah kita, Sekolah Bukit Rambai hadapi dan sedang tangani semata-mata untuk nak mempromosikan dan memertabatkan sukan. Apa cabaran yang kita hadapi dari segi Malaysia punya education punya prinsip lah. Apa cabaran dia? Kita
SK Bukit Rambai challenge in sport in the school for parents, not support from parents. Someone, not many parents must support children how to manage in the sport. We focus for curriculum, not to sport, because mindset sport not go too far in Malaysia. This focus for curriculum. Now in Malaysia, kerajaan berfokus pada curriculum and sport. So kita in Malaysia now focus for SEGA and PGSK. How to go sekolah yang lebih baik atau ke college atau university. Now, first I think the SK Bukit Rambai must open mindset lah for never for ibu bapa lah. I think that so cabaran yang lebih kuat lah. So I am headmaster in the SK Bukit Rambai. I think Seorang Agong, I must do something for our parents in Bukit Rambai. Okay, thank you.
Alright, Mr. Ben.
Hello.
Okay, Mr. Azlan, do you like to add on to it? Okay,
Hello,
go ahead,
hello.
Mr. Azlan. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Azlan. You can add on to it.
Yes, in part of that. Okay, in part of that. Okay. Hello. Okay, in part of that, there's a problem in the school is a facilities that we have in the school, because the facilities in the school is very limited, and sometimes even to buy the ball, sometimes we need to we have a location, but the location is not the small amount of money, so we need to be creative. But sometimes this is very funny fact. Even we don't have a proper rugby field, but we can compete in tournament, even in the what level, national or international. That's the funny things about my school. Even without proper training, without don't have any guidance or without module, we will able to bring our player and our student to the next level. That's the challenge, and that's the funny fact about the sport in my school. Thank you.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Azlan. Thank you, Mr. Azlan. All right, Mr. Ben. Okay. So, having said that, what Mr. Azlan has just said earlier, can either Mr. Ben, Mr. Gary, or Mr. David, can you please emphasize on? Can you please explain on this? Is financial an important thing, or is it the most important thing in order for any development program in sports? Money. We are talking about money. Is money very important, or can we do development without having a sufficient fund, or something like that? Mr. David, perhaps.
Sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot of creative ways. I think we're seeing in the last year of the pandemic, people be really creative with how to continue to train when circumstances are not ideal and you don't have the proper facilities for it, even at home. Still trying to get some training done or some practice done, and so just as you've mentioned, you're still able to achieve a high level of competition, even though facilities are not ideal. And in some ways, it probably evokes or develops something in your students that even though they didn't have everything that they maybe other schools had, or maybe that they think they needed, they're still able to achieve a high level. So, while I think finances are a tool to help achieve, I don't think it's a requirement.
All right.
I think your school is a great example of what you've already been able to do, and hopefully can continue.
All right. Thank you, Mr. David. Mr. Gary, would you like to add anything on that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I think we as a club, I think we as a sport are probably better identified with limited resources than the abundance of some of the teams and players we were talking about earlier in the football premiership. So the way that is done is, you know, we're harnessing really a passion for the sport, and we're also harnessing volunteers. So World Rugby, in fact, is more volunteers than actually full-time professional individuals. You know, I'm a volunteer for World Rugby, and you know, so I wouldn't say finances are you know, pivotal. I think finances allow you to do more things. I still think you can harness the quality within your players, within your coaches, you know, through collaborations and, you know, through contributions from other organisations. I don't necessarily know it has to have a financial label on it.
All right, like what Mr. David just said earlier, financial are the tools. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gary and Mr. David. Okay. Any questions? Roundtable. Mr. Gary, do you have any questions to ask any of our panelists? Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously I play a big play a big importance on coach education. What have you guys been doing as far as educating your coaches in the school or your teachers in order to play rugby?
All right, Mr. Azlan. Mr. Azlan, perhaps. What have we been doing in order to educate the coaches? Mr. Azlan? Mr. Azlan? Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Mr. Gary was asking, what have we been doing?
What is the question? Yeah. Yes.
What have we been doing in order to educate our coaches, you know?
Doing what?
Mr. Gary, can you please ask the question, please?
So basically,
for time being, can you repeat again, Mr. Gary's question? Because I just something.
No problem.
Can you repeat again? Yes, the question, Mr. Gary.
So what I was saying is how do you go about you know, improving your coaches through education? Do you have any resources in order to do that? You know, how do you improve them?
Oh, okay. For time being, we are okay. For your information, Mr. Gary, starting from 2008, there's one wave of the new coaches that come to the Malacca school. There's all the young teachers, and then they already started the rugby phenomena in Malacca at the back of 2000 and 2008, if I'm not mistaken. Because before that, there's only during 2005, if the rugby competition is straight go to the state level. But after that wave on 2008, they are allowed us to do the competition during the area state. Then after that, go to the national state. So from there, we have a resources. We have a kind of the network that we are making the network between our coaches and others coaches in another school. So that's the best way that how they exchange the knowledge between them. But this for me, and this is not proper because why we are still not guided by the by somebody or guiding by one organized body to help teachers to improve the skills of the how to deliver the skill of playing rugby. That's it's a big challenge for my coaches. Thank you, Mr. Gary.
Okay. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you, Mr. Azlan. And Mr. Gary, that is why we need you down here, Mr. Gary, in Malacca. All right, any questions from Mr. David, perhaps?
Sure. You've mentioned rugby specifically. What are your other focus sports, or is rugby just kind of the one that you're trying to get started right now? What other ones are you seeking competition in currently?
All right, Mr. Azlan, perhaps. What other sports other than rugby?
Okay.
Football, is it?
Okay. The yes, they do the football because why?
Champion of Malacca, is
Started
it?
from 2016. There's the one competition organized by the Bank Rakyat Foundation. There's a 7-side football. They go to the state by state level. Okay. What is the best thing about the championship is during since 2016 until 2019, our school play in the tournament and came back to the school with medals and trophies. And the second one in the 2019, where we are the champion of the Malacca, then we will represent our country, our state to the national level. That's the flow. That's the flow from 2016 until 2019. Then at 2020, there's a pandemic, so we cannot do anything. We are very frustrated because that's the talent that we have developed from. They are from year 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Then after that, then we really hope in the football we have a continuous tournament. So do the rugby. So we hope on the rugby we have continuous tournament. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Azlan. Is that okay, Mr. David? All right, all right, ladies and gentlemen. Now we come to the end of our conference. But before we adjourn, I would like to let each and every one of our panelists here to give their closing speech, short closing speech perhaps. And we will start with the Honorable Mr. Ben Hill, the head of school of Oasis International School. Go ahead, Mr. Ben.
Okay, on behalf of Oasis International School, I just want to thank our host school, SKBR, for just hosting this event. It's been great to get to know some of the challenges and some of the strategies that all of us in our organizations are using to benefit our students. That's the most important thing, is that our students benefit from our efforts. But I thank you for including Oasis in this process, and I hope that we can continue to work together in the future. Thank you very much.
It's an honor for us, Mr. Ben. All right. Can we have Mr. David?
Yeah, I also just want to thank you for hosting us this conference and just getting a chance to meet all of you and to hear some of the ways that you're continuing to develop sport in Malaysia. And us learning from each other, I think, is such a valuable partnership. I hope that we can come down to Malacca sometime for a tournament. Invite you here. We'll seek to hopefully make that happen in the future.
Okay. We are hoping for that, Mr. David, for you to come down to Malacca. All right. Perhaps we can have now Mr. Azlan.
Thank you. Okay, for thank you all the panelists. Thank you for the chances. Can talk live regarding about the sport in our school and your school, and we hope someday we can exchange, go to visit, maybe from your school come to our school, and from our school go to your school, and maybe we can arrange some friendly. But this one is subject to the condition by the government. Hope to see you all in future. Thank you.
Mr. Azlan. And before we proceed to Mr. Gary, I have one final question. I've been writing down these questions since yesterday. Okay, for Mr. Gary and perhaps Mr. David, how do you spell color actually? Mr. David and Mr. Gary, how do you spell color actually? Is it C-O-L-O-U-R or C-O-L-O-R? Can you explain on that? Because I'm having problem explaining that to my children, to my kids in school. How do you spell color? Mr. Gary, perhaps?
Well, the thing is, you know, English language is interpreted, and now we've got a US version of English and then we've got an English version of English, but I speak actually a London version of English. So that's completely different as well. But we still spell color with a U.
All right. What about you, Mr. David?
Yeah, we take out the U. For some reason, American English play by their own rules for some reason. But I mean, my wife and I, we can't even agree on how to say certain English words, so I don't expect others to spell it correctly.
So how do you explain that to your overseas school student?
Okay, I can. The way we explain it is there's no wrong version of spelling color. If you spell it the British way, it's okay, and if you spell it the American way, it's also okay. No marks off for either way.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ben. All right, can I have the closing speech from Mr. Gary?
Sure. Look, I'd just like to say thank you very much for the opportunity of coming and being part of the panel today. So thank you very much to SK Bukit Rembai and Mr. Headmaster and Mr. Azlan. Also my fellow panelists. It's been great to get an insight not only into what you do as a school, but also as well our fellow panelists, as their thoughts and you know, the situations that they've dealt with sport. There's obviously a lot of parallels between what we've been saying, which I think for you guys is, you know, it's something maybe that you can take on board and implement into how you're dealing with sports. Stingrays who are attached to your school have been a big part of our own tournament since it started in 2015, and I hope they continue to come down on a regular basis. We may not be able to run our international tournament this year because obviously it relies on people coming into the country, but we do hope to run something for local teams as soon as we're allowed, maybe towards the end of the year, and Stingrays will be first on the invite list.
All right, thank you so much.
Myself and the team that I coach now, which is basically the veterans, we come to Malacca every year. Traditionally, we play a team there, and I usually come back with lots of bumps and bruises from all your courageous Malaccan men. So long may that continue. And as far as you know, we were talking about finance earlier being an important part. It's not something that we can help with, but what we can do is we can share our own resources and our knowledge using our full-time coach, and and obviously helping with continual professional development for your coaches. So, you know, we'd like to collaborate with the school, make you part of our development group, where we can help grow the game and leave a legacy of better practice.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Gary. Thank you for the compliment as well. All right. And last but not least is our closing speech by our headmaster, Mr. Hashim bin Hussein. Please, Mr. Hashim bin Hussein.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Good morning. I will say thank you for Mr. Gary, Mr. Benhel, and Mr. David. Thank you for conference this morning. I hope, I think so many tips about education and sport you bring, especially in rugby sport. I hope my school can cooperate with your school every anytime. I hope you can enjoy to welcome Malacca about many history in Malacca. You know that. 1591 Portuguese or English come to Tanah Melayu. Okay, I hope we will enjoy in the conference. Thank you for Ali panels. Thank you. Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much. You are welcome. Goodbye.
Mr. Hashim. All right. Ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Again?
Okay. Yeah, Cikgu Khairul.
Yes, sir.
One thing, Mr. Gary, I can red rose.
Finally, my headmaster already got the answer.
In Malacca, you know. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Thank you very much. All right. Sadly, we've come to the end of what I would say as a wonderful and fun, yet informative and meaningful conference. We would like to say thanks to our fantastic panelists who have all contributed amazingly throughout this 2 hours conference of International Education and Sports Exchange via video conference between SKPK Rambai and Oasis International School, together with KLC FRC. It was a great honor and pleasure for us. We did get a lot from all of you, and inshallah we will apply which is possible. We would also like to thank our audience for your active participation. Hopefully the conference will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you for your attention. Remember to follow SOP at all times and stay safe wherever you are. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day. Bye. Take care everyone.